What I often say is I like to look at fundraising as dating, as in, yes, it's frustrating that only 2% of funding goes to female founders, but at the same time, I like to actually just not think about that all too much and just pitch and also really feel that it's not just for them to choose, but it's also for me to choose which investor best suits our company.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Upkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 96. Today's story begins on 24 April 2013, when the Rana Plaza building collapsed in Dhaka, Bangladesh. That building housed several garment factories and more than 1,000 people died and thousands more were injured. At the time, my guest Jolanda Kooi had worked in the garment industry for over 10 years. That day made one thing painfully clear to her. The problem wasn't just the building. It was a lack of transparency in the fashion industry. Big brands were promising sustainable practices in their marketing, but these promises were as hollow as a dead tree. And Jolanda knew that she had to do something to change it. In 2020, she co-founded tex.tracer. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Jolanda set out to build a platform that helps fashion brands to trace their full supply chain, from the raw materials to the end product, and to do so using secure and verified data. In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, Jolanda Kooi joins me to talk about her journey to bring truth to the fashion's supply chain. We'll explore transparency as a competitive advantage, how data fights greenwashing and builds resilience, and what it takes to set a new industry standard. Plus, you'll hear what fundraising and dating have in common. So when you're ready to listen and learn how tex.tracer empowers fashion brands with transparent, resilient supply chains, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Jolanda Kooi. Jolanda Kooi, welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Good to have you. A question I always start with is how you got into your current job or current position.
Yeah, thanks, Dirk-Jan, for having me. Really great to be here. And how did I get into this current position? Well, basically, as founder and CEO at tex.tracer, it actually all started 20 years ago when I finished my business administration degree and was sent to the Far East to actually start my career there in development and production of garments. And for basically 20 years after that, I spent a lot of time in the Far East and everywhere else on the planet, basically, in developing garments. And at some point, I saw that really there had to be a change. Change was necessary, and I wanted to be part of that change, be part of the solution, basically, for the fashion industry. And that's how I actually started tex.tracer.
Okay, so we'll get to what tex.tracer does in a minute. Where does your passion for fashion and for garments and for impact come from?
Yeah, well, thanks. I would say the passion for fashion and garments actually was instilled in me, I think, already at a very early age, because my parents were retailers. They had several stores that sold basically multi-brand offer. And so that's, for me, it was already quite at an early age that I said I want to be part of that industry. At the same time, you also asked me not just about that passion, but more about the impact passion. Well, for me, when I did my bachelor in textile engineering prior to doing business administration, it was quite clear to me that I wanted to be in that fashion industry, but not so much on the front end or designing or so, but much more on what really drives the fashion industry and how can we optimize that industry. yeah, basically working on that in development and production over the last 20 years made me realize that there was a lot that could be improved in terms of processes. So that's what I focused on.
Hmm.
And at some point, I realized, well, actually, it was a very specific situation where in April 2013, the
Hmm.
Rana Plaza factory collapse happened. That was, by that day, over 1,500 women, daughters, mothers did not return home from work because they died in Bangladesh
Hmm.
whilst working and sewing our garments. And that was a moment where I was actually walking the streets of London with my then 3-month-old baby girl, and I realized, you know what? Normally, I would maybe be able to close my eyes, but this is really my industry, so I should not close my eyes, but I should really say, you know, how can I be part of the change that is so necessary, part of the solution, and
So what
as a
what
young
did
mother, that helps. You know, you
yeah,
really think, okay, I want to be part of that solution.
yeah. So what was not good about it, except for of course the collapse of this factory,
Yeah, the
probably the building and a couple of other things, safety procedures that were not in place. But what was structurally wrong about fashion?
well, I would say there are three parts. I mean, the social part you've connected with already. Then there's an environmental part of the fashion industry. I guess we
Mm.
all need clothes. So, you know, it's tough to really go to zero emissions. Having said that, it is important to actually look at how we consume clothes and of what
Hmm.
materials they're being made of. So that's an important part. The third part is an important one that I've also dealt with quite a bit is the power imbalance between suppliers on the one hand and their clients on the other hand. Often suppliers are in the global south and buyers in the global north. And well, this is one of the things that I like to focus on as well, and seeing how we can improve the standards of the suppliers so that they actually get a seat at the table and can have a dialogue with their clients.
So what is this? How does this power imbalance then come to the surface? What kind of things do we have to talk about or think about?
Yeah, well, good question. Basically, what we see is obviously, let's be very clear that a lot of brands and retailers are working on this with, for instance, two-way code of conduct, basically saying we're not just asking suppliers to adhere to a certain code of conduct, but we also force ourselves and our team members to actually act in a certain way. That is very much about having a dialogue with suppliers and also seeing their side of the story.
Hmm.
But in the end, for ages, the fashion industry, as also many other industries, but this one in particular, has been all about it's a race to the bottom, and it's about delivering the right quality, the right price at the right time. And yeah, for ages, that was just it. And price is then a very important part, unfortunately. So that's where that will not change, but it's about creating additional aspects on a product, for instance, in terms of sustainability aspects, which makes that product does not have to be sold for the lowest price, but that it has extras, which is why that a consumer will be able to spend a euro extra on a
Yeah.
product.
So basically, if I hear you correctly, what you want to do is create a bit of transparency about where the product comes from, what the characteristics of the product are besides the fabric that it's made of, but also you want to make sure that suppliers get a fair price. My
Yes,
question then is, if that is right, how do you ensure that if suppliers get the right price? Because if I understand the industry a bit, there's a lot of middlemen.
yes.
How do you ensure that it trickles down to those women and girls in Bangladesh or any other place in the global south for that
Yeah.
matter?
Well, to me, the only way to do that is by making sure that brands and retailers truly know their supply chain.
Uh-huh.
Also, there for ages is it was like, oh yeah, I know where my product is coming from. It's from China because the supplier that I sent my contract to and that I'm in touch with is based in China.
Yeah.
Having said that, often that supplier is an import to export company and they may not even have their own factory.
Hmm.
So at tex.tracer, we're a SaaS solution, software as a service, that helps brands and retailers to start getting in touch with that supplier that's on your contract, purchase order, and then connect with each and every partner beyond that tier one or tier zero, as we like to call it in the fashion industry. And with that, we basically connect with all those supply chain partners all the way down to raw material,
Hmm.
or all the way back to raw material, I could better say. We connect with them so we can collect data from them, verify that data in various ways, so that we can allow our clients to assess that data with risk assessments, for instance, defining as well, where is my volume, where is a certain kind of material, and then what is the risk of that specific supply chain, particularly if we also look at the volume that's related to my supply chains. And from there, they can act to improve on their supply chains, create living wage projects in Bangladesh, or
Huh?
create other projects elsewhere, and then making sure that with that they can truly start the dialogue with suppliers, improve their supply chains, and basically get ready for the Green Deal, which basically is making sure that by 2050 we're truly net zero, but not just that it's also a better fashion ecosystem by that time, because it's not just the environmental side, but also the workers in the supply chain, which is also an important part of, for instance, CSRD,
Hmm.
have a better life.
And the Green Deal, for context, is especially for people in the US, is that basically the European legislation around making supply chains, plural in this case,
Yeah.
more transparent and more green. So with a lower impact on the climate, or at least with an impact on the climate that we know
Yes,
what it
indeed.
is, because that's actually more important, because if you know something, you can actually manage it. Whereas think your example of, oh, I do business with this party in China, not knowing what's behind it,
Absolutely.
doesn't really allow you to do any supply chain management whatsoever. Because if that
That's it.
supplier all of a sudden then deals with a party that is unable to deliver.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have an issue. And, so there are so many brands and retailers that actually unknowingly are greenwashing. They don't even know it, because basically they say, oh, I received a certain certificate from my supplier stating that this product is organic cotton, for instance, but they may not have dived in that specific certification requirement too deeply. And that's why they think they can actually communicate that information, but they can't. Maybe the certificate is actually not even coming from the certificate owner, certificate holder.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of such cases, and that's why we think it's indeed important to act based on facts, so that whatever you communicate as a business is reliable data. You stay
And
away
factually
from.
correct.
Exactly, so you can act confidently and stay away from greenwashing.
Yeah. And what I also heard you say is that besides greenwashing, which for some people is a nice to have, it's also business continuity in the end.
Well, absolutely, yeah. This is very much about creating resilient supply chains,
Yeah.
because, well, particularly the risk assessments then also help you to define where, yeah, your hotspots are, whatever
Yeah.
they can be. But it's indeed, for instance, finding out that your cotton is coming from China. Well, there is a big chance of that then coming from the Xinjiang area, where we have labor issues. Basically, that allows you to then define, am I accepting this as a board of a company?
Hmm.
Or will we take alternative action or actions to mitigate these problems, to make sure that we move that product elsewhere or get properly certified, so that we can again create that resilient supply chain moving forward? And this is also where we work with suppliers on creating that dialogue together with them. And now, let's be clear, for suppliers, providing us with all kinds of information is very much a must have, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Sorry, a must do.
Yeah.
So it's not something that they are so excited about. Having said that, to make sure that they communicate details to us, our platform is very much focusing on their experience as well. So not just our client experience, but making sure that the data is added in a very simplified way so that suppliers can work with the platform in their own language, even on mobile phone. If you're on the cotton field, probably even no internet connection, no problem. You can just upload data there, and once you get back to a data connection, that data is sent through via our platform. And that's super important, because that way we can get their information and then actually start a dialogue with them as well to basically help them get more information to their clients as well, not just the client maybe that's on our platform, but also other clients, so they can future-proof their business, share that they're open to being transparent and also being open about what their current status is and how they can improve on that status.
So I want to double click a bit on the transparency that you create. This podcast is called Women Disrupting Tech.
Yeah.
So what tech, how do you enable all those parties to deliver data? Because as you said, you need to make it easy. Need to make it low dependent on let's say mobile
On skills. Yeah.
connectivity,
Yeah.
because people need to be on the field, not anywhere else. So how do you put that, let's say, ecosystem together so people can easily report it? Because and that's also a question that I had. Does making it easier to report, is that enough to get as much data as you need?
Well, it's basically the first step. So we say let's make it easy by allowing partners, suppliers to upload data via their mobile phone,
Uh-huh.
because they may not have a very fast laptop in their office, because their premises may be just an embroidery mill with 2 machines and 10 people, and maybe a very old computer that does allow to collect emails with their embroidery design, but that's more or less it.
Yeah.
Having said that, we do see that most of those suppliers do have a smartphone, so they can work with our platform, and then we make sure that the data that we ask them is not just simple, it's also a step-by-step approach. So it's first about connecting and creating their account. Once they've done that, we say, hallelujah, congratulations, thank you for doing that. And let's move to the next step in providing us with more details about, for instance, certifications, again, on facility level.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically from there, we go from company level to facility level, and the deepest level is product level data, where we, as an example, collect 300 data points on environmental data points for one specific product. So it goes
Quite deep.
quite deep, absolutely. But we do that in a step-by-step approach. So that really helps us. And yeah, with that, we can truly connect with male and female factory workers.
How do you make it worth their while to deliver that data? What's in it for them?
Yeah, well, this is a lovely question that we ask ourselves definitely on a day-to-day basis. And to be honest, it's almost like the Holy Grail. So I won't say that we have the perfect story in place. At the same time, we are very much focusing on that easy approach and step-by-step data collecting. Plus, it's also very much about a personalized approach, which means that we not just tell suppliers this is what you have to do, but it's also about bringing them personalized information that can help their business moving forward. So it's about informing them about rules and regulations, for instance, happening in the EU. What does that actually mean? Why do you need to adhere to it? And what do you need to do to basically future-proof your business to make sure that you can help and facilitate your clients in the best possible way? And we not just then stop there, but also say, you know what, we have weekly online check-ins where they can ask us any questions also relating to broader developments in the industry, and live meetings with events going on, particularly in the larger countries, production countries such as India, Bangladesh, and China. So in 2 weeks' time, our team will be hosting another live event in Tirupur in India, one of the major jersey, so knit
Knitting
areas of India. And we have our colleagues from Amsterdam flying in, but also partner liaison officers in this case India, but we have them all through the Far East, where they connect with suppliers in their local language, in their time zone, so that they can always get the information that they need and get more support from us.
Okay, so it's also in part then a network play.
Well, it is. It is indeed. Yeah, and creating more and more.
That's I guess the also part of the answer to the question is that they get access to a wider network, and that it probably over time opens up different distribution channels for them, which
Yeah,
then in
indeed.
turn will lead to more resilient businesses locally.
Yes, yeah, well, that's true. So it's indeed in that personalized approach, it's indeed very much also about connecting them
Hmm.
with the right suppliers. Next year, also, we'll be launching our community or marketplace, as we like to call it, where we can connect suppliers to each other and suppliers and their clients to each other as well. So they know where to find each other and
Okay.
indeed future proof themselves.
Okay. So how about tech component? Because
Yes.
flying in is not really a technical exercise. Coming together at a certain venue only to limit, well, there's tech in everything nowadays, but what's the technical component of your platform?
Yeah, well, very good question, because the parts that I mentioned now are more the nice additions, because indeed we believe that the personal touch is very important.
Hmm.
Having said that, the main part is, of course, a software as a service, SaaS offering, a platform which is fully in the cloud, so browser based, developed by our tech team. And we've worked on our platform. We've been working on it for 4+ years now, and adding new features and modules on a monthly basis. And the basis for our platform or the foundation is a private blockchain, and we've basically said let's work on blockchain because we want to make sure that data is as reliable as possible
Hmm.
and also that it is immutable. And blockchain really focuses on that immutable data.
Hmm.
Of course, it's still about garbage in is garbage out, and that's why we make sure that the data is as reliable as possible once it comes in. And what we do there is basically our proprietary software component is all about that we know who, where, and when has uploaded the data. And we do that by adding time and geolocation stamps to each and every document or data point, adding peer-to-peer reviews, whereby suppliers connect in platform and having to approve each other's documentation as evidence that they're truly part of a certain supply chain. And with that, we create a digital handshake,
Hmm.
and all that information is then notarized in our private blockchain.
So basically, it's is information from various different sources that is validated by, let's say, the supplier data is by purchasers verify that this information is correct. Like, yes, we've actually seen this, received this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and an important part for us there that I almost forget is, the data that we gather is not from Excel sheets. It's always primary source data, as we like to call it, which is data derived directly from suppliers. So if we have data about the yarn used in a certain product, we will have received that information on yarn from the spinning mill, the one who's made the yarn.
How do you measure impact?
That's a lovely one. Measuring impact for us is, in the end, it goes beyond collecting data. So what we like to
Yeah.
say is we start, of course, as a software platform with collecting data and verifying it.
Hmm.
But it's very much about what happens in improvements in the supply chains of our clients,
Hmm.
what is really relevant. And what happens there is something that we can basically see happen over time in our platform. Because, for instance, the first season that a client will work with us, they have information on only the direct supplier and their confectioning party. The second season, they will have information on their material as well, or even on fiber and yarn.
Hmm.
And then we start to also ask all these suppliers more information on their on facility level, on environmental data and social data. And we ask them this question on a yearly basis to see what improvements have been made there. And we even go then it's a level deeper on product data, where we ask those 300 questions, as an example, on the environmental emissions of a certain product. And also that, because we do that for the whole collection of our clients, we can basically start with a benchmark, a nil mating on year one. And then second year, our clients can show the improvements just by collecting data again.
Okay, so but how do you, let's say, match garments and fabrics to emissions? Is that a sort of standard formula type of thingy, or is that data that is really sourced locally, like laser pointed on this particular production site has this particular footprint?
The ultimate goal is to have the latter, which we
Yeah,
call then a life cycle assessment done with primary source data.
yeah,
Having said that, often in the beginning, there is not that much primary source data. So then we start with benchmark data, which is collected through many research documents here in the world. We follow the guidelines for life cycle assessments with partners that actually or even perform these life cycle assessments, third party partners, because would not want to have any discussion there. As we are the data collectors, we'd like them to do the analysis actually. And so, yes, you can do that analysis already based on benchmark data. And once we have primary data, that primary data then overrules the benchmark data. And even if we only have 10% primary data, that will already often reduce the emissions because benchmark data, well, basically, we say we actually start with worst case benchmark data so
yeah.
that the primary source data will always be better. And from there, you can see that you can improve as a company in terms of your emissions.
I see. So how do you scale this?
Yeah, scaling for us is very much about automating
Uh,
processes. So where I just explained to you a bit more of also the very the personal touch that we have. The basis of our platform is very much tech touch. So we have clients that get onboarded in consultation with our client success team, after which they and their supply chain partners can find any information they may need via our online academy and our chatbot, of course, powered by AI to make sure that they can find all the most recent information and answer any question they have. And we're working with many external parties like certification bodies and standard holders, as we like to call them. Those are the certification standards to receive certification data automatically so that suppliers no longer will need to upload that kind of information. And then also in terms of the assessments, AI is taking over also the assessments step by step. We have a social audit report. Those are very extensive audits. Our platform summarizes all that information so that our clients can see with a blink of an eye, okay, this is where we need to get started now, specifically focus on one supplier, but also in aggregated data for their full supply chain. And this is where everything is more and more scalable.
okay, I see. I was wondering, who is the client? Is that the supplier, or is that, let's say, the large fashion brand who wants to know what their impact is? The H&Ms, the, well, Zara's.
It's the latter indeed. Yeah, brands and retailers are our clients. We think that's also very important, as in client is the one who's paying. We said the supply chain, or actually the clients are already pushing so much to their supply chain in terms of their power imbalance, where I started off with. That's why we don't want to charge suppliers. So our platform is free of charge for any supplier. So a supplier can just go to our platform, create an account, and fill out all details, even without a client asking them to provide details. And particularly in the future, that will be helpful for them because then they will be able to be found in our platform and clients will be able to actually locate them and
Yeah,
see that if they're sourcing for new supply chain partners.
yeah, because I was thinking that sort of, if you create, let's say, the supplies side of the platform by making it free, it makes it appealing, and probably, question mark, increases the willingness to pay for the fashion brands, because then they can all of a sudden in one click, or at least through one platform, connect with a whole host of
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah,
are there
yeah, suppliers.
are there any competitors in that sense
I would
for
say,
you?
luckily, we do. We do have competitors. As in, when we started, it was a very immature market, but the market is growing. So we do have international competitors that we work well with, actually, because this market is so huge that we all have our own sweet spot in the market, and
Is there
that's
sort of
helpful.
is there sort of a standardization coming? Because
Well,
one of the things I learned from an episode I had with Victoria Lawson is that she's in FMCG supply chains, and she said that there's like no standardization of labeling or data whatsoever.
yeah,
So I can imagine that if you also can sort of offer that to suppliers, like we set a standard which and then you can actually go shop as a supplier.
yeah. It will be it will be great to have that standard. So also in
Mhm.
this supply chain, indeed, or in this industry, there is no standard as such as yet. Having said that, we've been in discussions, conversations with our competitors to actually see how we can set that standard. It will take a while, but one of the things that I can mention is that as we speak, we're working on a global data sharing platform that will be accessible to all transparency platforms and lifecycle assessment parties, et cetera, where they can basically find information on suppliers, basically then reducing the audit fatigue and reducing the workload for suppliers, because they don't have to fill out various platforms, but those platforms can share their details, of
Mhm.
course, only with permission of the suppliers, let's be very clear. But they can share that data so that suppliers no longer have to input data multiple times.
That is sort of the ultimate form of transparency, I would say, is that you have just one, at least one set of definitions.
Well, exactly, absolutely, absolutely, and it's quite a struggle to get there, but
What
and
is getting in
basically,
the way? What's the most difficult part of that discussion?
well, if I look at the most recent conversations we've had with the industry, I guess one of the things is also just GDPR. Company data is not that difficult, but we'd like to have data from people as well, because we need to know which person is the beneficial owner of a company, and
Hmm.
that's where you then touch the GDPR rules and how to make sure that we can process that data in the right way. Plus, basically, each platform sees that data as something that they own. And this is where we've said, well, actually, we're a data processor. So the data is actually owned by the one who's uploaded that data. Suppliers, clients can use that data, and we will actually help suppliers to communicate their data to the global data sharing platform and thereby to other platforms if they wish to.
Hmm.
But then, basically, in terms of the question, what's in it for them, making sure that there is, other than workload reduction, probably even something more for them. And now it's a bit early to say too much about it because it's such early stage, but I'd like to see that in the future there may be, another benefit, maybe a sort of financial benefit for suppliers as well, to actually engage in this conversation and sharing their details. So that's already about the solution. Going back to your question, it's very hard actually to get started, but step by step we'll get there.
I wanted to switch gears a bit because you've already had some experiences with customers.
Yes.
What have been your experiences and what have been your learnings from that?
Yeah. Well, so basically, in the 4 years since we started, we're by now working with 50 clients and 250 brands
Hmm.
across Benelux, Denmark, and UK. Over 100 million items have flown through our platform. And what we've seen is initially it's all about scalability also of a tech platform in terms of yeah, data access and processing data. So the processing power has been a bit of an issue a while back, but by now we know how to also there change gears, basically making sure that we can process all that data of those millions of items. Let's be clear, by 2030, BHAG is to have traced 10 billion items. So we
Is that a
still,
lot? Yeah, it sounds a lot, but
well, it sounds a lot, and at the same time, if you look at the total,
that's if you look at yeah, if you look at the population, it's one piece of clothing, just over one piece of clothing per person.
yeah, definitely, and even more. So it's basically 10% of the market, but still,
Okay.
with 10% of the market, we think we should. That's already would be a great achievement. And let's be clear, we need more partners there to achieve that goal. So that's why we focus on working with partners. And I guess that then linking that back to our experiences with clients. I think it's very much about creating partnerships, about working together with them. And in a partnership, it's also, well, or in this partnership, it's important to say, it's a step by step approach. So we're on a journey together. And we don't want to, yeah, basically finish that journey tomorrow because we can't. It's really a step by step approach where every day you learn more, and based on that knowledge, you can define what is the next step to take. And I think that's the most important learning, that it's just not easy, but at the same time that because clients get more information, they can really act based on facts and make sure that they truly improve their supply chain for the better of their company and the world, instead of thinking that they have done the right thing, whereas that's actually not true.
So why is that important then for me as an end customer?
Yeah, that's also a nice one. I think it's, well, going back to that Green Deal as an example. So the Green Deal is the EU legislation. Basically, we've agreed all together in the EU that we want to be net zero by 2050. And we've also set a couple of other standards saying that we want better livelihoods for people working in supply chains and many others, but these are the ones that I'm now focusing on, better production, basically. So that is what we are focusing on. We think that it's important for our clients, brands and retailers, to be able to act based on facts and make
Hmm.
educated decisions,
Yeah.
but the same for a consumer. And that's where our platform not only collects that information and allows clients to analyze and improve on their supply chain, but we also communicate that information to consumers via digital product passport. And the digital product passport is also future legislation under the ESPR, also another EU legislation that will come into force most likely 2027. And many of our clients are already preparing for that by adding digital product passports to their products.
Hmm.
They're often sharing that via via QR code. And that digital product passports report allows a consumer to understand the background of their product in terms of composition, but also the product journey or the whole manufacturing process, emission data, but also wash and care data, and more user face data in terms of, okay, what if I need to repair this product? What can I do or should I do? What if I want to resell, etc. And we think this is an important part to be sharing this with the consumer. However, I hear you thinking, okay, but why would I scan this QR code? And we indeed only see, like, on average, a 5% of customers actually scanning a QR code. Having said that, if brands really focus on that QR code and share with clients why it's so important to look at that, it can become something that really drives revenue. And it can also drive new revenue models by basically zooming into the repair market and resale market, where those brands can also actually take part of the sales
Yeah.
volume.
Because I was especially repair and recycling market, I think, where ultimately this plays out as well, for the simple reason that I don't know if we have it already or if it's coming in next year or the year after, but I think there's legislation coming or already in place that you actually have to produce goods with the aim that they're repairable first and
Absolutely.
recyclable second, and throwing it away is basically the last option you have.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
think the especially the QR code or the data sets on how to repair, where to go to get your repairs done can play a major role, and then also drive indeed extra revenue models, because then you
Yeah,
can actually repurpose the whole shops into.
absolutely. It's super important. And well, let's also be clear, like, well, in the end, we think what we do is just basically providing brands, retailers, but also the consumer and governments in the future with factual information that is reliable, so they can act based on facts. But it's very much about what is then done with that data. So we like to say this is only the basis for change. Real change needs to happen at our clients, and that's where we what we help them with, and also at consumers. Having said that, I'm a firm believer that this kind of change really needs to be driven by the industry, so by brands and retailers. And let's make sure that whilst what we do in first instance is something that is about being compliant
Hmm?
with rules and regulations, and it's about workload reduction as you have to do it, but it's also very much about creating added value to your brand by communicating this information in such a way that the consumer understands that this is not a product that I should try and get the cheapest price for, the lowest price. No, this is an amazing product that actually
It can be
has
restored and repaired and recycled
exactly,
time and
yeah,
again, and that has
yeah,
resale value. Because
exactly.
ultimately, I think maybe there's also a play for you in the vintage part of
Yes,
the ecosystem.
absolutely. And then that brands can understand that where now the consumer itself is actually selling their secondhand product on Vinted, that brands can be part of that discussion and
Yeah,
that sell as well. And this is where
because currently they don't get anything from that
ex-
resale
exactly. So it's very much about connecting them with Vinted or with their own secondhand
market.
partner.
Yeah,
Exactly. And the market. So indeed, you can get higher quality secondhand market where part of the sale will go to the peer-to-peer, basically to a consumer who's selling that product, but probably part of it can also flow back, of that revenue can flow back to the brand or retailer.
yeah. How receptive are brands and retailers for this argument?
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, they have to comply. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a fact of life. But I know from my own experience that compliance is sort of the last thing you want to do, for the simple reason that you want to earn money.
yeah.
They're commercial enterprises. How receptive are they for the pitch? Hey, you can do so much more with with this data. You can actually you multiply the number of use cases.
Yeah, well, basically, it's that they become more receptive if we can show them that it's a commercial rather than a compliance issue. Because if they understand that there is more revenue to be made long term, not just tomorrow, but particularly in a couple of years, and that's why they should invest in this.
Yeah.
That does resonate with clients. And so we're doing various, well, pilots and just client cases as we speak to actually show also other clients like there is really an opportunity out there to commercialize the digital product passport so they can actually future proof themselves and tap into new business models.
So you're
So
actually
luckily,
helping
not
them to future proof.
well, basically, yeah, basically, absolutely, absolutely. Because we also for us, we don't want to just be a compliance-driven company. It shouldn't be just about compliance. Of course, compliance helps us, but let's be clear. Like when we started this business, it was also that there were no rules and legislation yet. So at that stage, it was very much we were intrinsically motivated to say, we need change, and we see that clients that are working in Excel files are really having troubles getting the right information. So
Yeah.
let's help them get the right information so they have access to their supply chain, so they can start that dialogue and truly change instead of only thinking that they're actually changing and it's just a paper exercise.
Is it also in part that brands didn't know how to execute?
I guess, yes, it's been really hard for them because many, many brands have been working in Excel for ages.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, unfortunately, particularly the fashion industry is one of those industries that's always last to innovate and digitize.
I can tell you a lot of horror stories about finance, and they're still working with
Yeah.
Excel
Yeah, well,
big
yeah,
time.
exactly. I guess so. And Excel, of course, is always an easy one. It's our big largest competitor, so to say.
Yeah.
So we take away a lot of business from Excel, and at the same time, we also see that Excel, in the end, if, in terms of reporting, clients love to actually connect our platform to Power BI and then work with Power BI or Excel to actually review the data, which is not bad because in the end that's also still okay. Digitization is very important, and because there were no proper solutions for a long time, the
Hmm.
clients continued in Excel. But for those that have been working on this, particularly CSR managers, often when we visit them, they're like, finally, great, this is what I need because I'm just working day in, day out in collecting data in Excel files via email. I have to upload it in our server. The Excel files hardly openable anymore because it's hard to open because it's so large.
There's a lot of
And
macros linked with each other and updates
exactly,
and
yeah.
cell updates. Oh my lord.
Yeah, and then once one of the team members leaves,
Yeah,
it's
you have
hard
to
for someone else
transition
to
all
understand.
the knowledge about it.
Exactly, because it's not so easy to understand, and that's what we're then now automating and saying basically it doesn't matter if someone leaves; it's all in the platform. We have an online academy, and you can be up and running in half an hour, basically, or even less.
Yeah, I think that then also is a huge upside for a brand, but also for a supplier, possibly, that they don't have to retrain people on
Well, that's
things.
it. Yeah, it's basically using also building history or historical data, using that historical data, not having to do things twice, and yeah, understanding. Oh, actually, 4 years ago, I shipped that product with that certification. I'm now repeating, or a client is repeating that product again. Let's do the same, or let's see how we can improve on that product. And most often it's not compared to a 4 year old product, but often it's just last season's product. Because in fashion, that's different to food and many other industries. We have a lot of articles that only get into the market once, and 10,000 pieces sold, and the next order is different again. And yes, it will still be a dress, for instance, but it will be a completely different dress with a different supply chain. So the supply chain is much more diverse and therefore opaque than many other supply chains. And yeah, this is where it's important to get that data.
I wanted to move to a slightly different topic. You're a woman, you're a CEO of a
Yeah,
fashion brand, and we met some time ago at Femstart, where you were
yeah,
fundraising. I was
yeah.
wondering what your experiences fundraising have been.
Yeah, well, what the interesting part is that I founded the company together with Bart Westerman, my
Hmm.
co-founder, and so I'm very well, in a way, also pleased to have a man on board as well,
Hmm.
because in the end, I believe in diverse teams. And as we started, I think it was something that we started together, also the fundraising part. But quite quickly, I sensed that this was really my task.
Hmm.
And it was daunting at first, but I quickly realized that actually I liked to do that fundraising part and speak with investors about how we are really the platform that's going to succeed
Hmm.
and why it's so important to actually invest in us. We're a mission-driven company. We're also a B Corp. Actually, for instance, looking at this totally different subject, but finding new resources in team members has so far been really relatively easy, even though we have a difficult climate here in the Netherlands. Because we're a tech startup and B Corp and created very much from the beginning focused on culture. We've been able to get good people on board, and that I think has also resonated well with investors.
Hmm.
So that's very much about why am I saying this? It's because I think it's also important to look beyond just the founders, but that there's also a team of good people there, diverse team. Having said that, also because we're in the textile industry, we have a lot of women on our team. So particularly here in Amsterdam, it's long been 80-20 Basically, it's now changing, but that was where we started.
And
But then
that's
back to
80% women?
80% women. Yes, yes,
Ah,
indeed. It's now changing because more of the we're growing as well, and so as we get more people, we like to. We've even tried to make sure that we have more male team members on board as well. But then again, going back to the funding part, where I first thought it was daunting, I quickly realized it's actually an interesting thing to do. And what I often say is I like to look at fundraising as dating, as in, it's yes, it's probably it's frustrating that only 2% of funding goes to female founders, but at the same time, I like to actually just not think about that all too much and just pitch and also really feel that it's not just for them to choose, but it's also for me to choose which investor best suits our company, and because it's going beyond money. It's sometimes also lately we even attracted a couple of smaller investors, which normally we thought we'd outgrown that, but it was very much also about network and expertise, where we thought we wanted to say fun, but good to have different kind of investors, female investors actually, on board as well.
so how do you decide which investors you want? Do you decide that upfront and then execute, or do you sort of go take it as it comes?
Well, over the past 4 years, I've collected a list of close to 100 potential investors
Hmm.
that I've spoken with. Basically, I've listed them all, like, which are the seed and pre-seed investors, which are the Series 1 investors, who are focused on impact, and where are they in terms of their fund, which investments have they made already, so that really I also understand who they are and that I can speak with them in the right way and at the right time as well. I try to keep all of them informed as well. I have to admit that that's one of the things that's always on my to-do list, like, oh yeah, let's do a bi-monthly update to investors, even external investors, potential investors, and then the months have gone and I realize, oops, I need to do another one.
Yeah,
But
that's what these podcasts are for.
yeah, well, exactly. But I think it's we try to stay in touch. But and it's in it, so it's I've been clearly marking also for our last raise, which we're closing now as we speak. Actually, focusing really on who have I spoken with, which investors could be right for this raise, and then really trying to focus on those that could be relevant for this moment, and more specifically have reach out to them
Hmm.
instead of to all investors. But it's something that actually takes. It's not just something I've been working on for the last couple of months in this fundraise. It's something that I do really on a monthly basis. Okay, is there still an investor that I should check out so that I know whether I should keep them informed? So by the time that, for instance, will go into Series A, I would know who to contact.
So you really do this sort of as a continuous exercise to keep track of who
So
are out there, what stage are we in versus what stage can they be useful? Because I
yes,
know various investors who will only start at Series A.
exactly. Yeah.
So that's
So
a
that's
bit
and
later stage.
exactly. So and let's be clear, like I think investing or getting ready for investment and the whole process can take up quite a lot of your time. So definitely when we're not fundraising, I'm also like that should not take up a lot of my time. But I do take say one call a week with a new investor to understand who they are, or with an investor that we've been in touch with for a longer time to just give them a more elaborate update, so they really know where we are and they keep they keep an eye will keep an eye on us, so that by the time that we are ready to actually approach them properly, we can move fast.
Yeah. So basically what I'm hearing you say is that it's in part networking, it's in part preparation, but also staying out of the dating scene, so to say, when you're not dating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important because, otherwise I'll have an issue. I mean, I often say I could spend a lot of time on speaking with investors, but then I cannot spend that time on increasing my business, basically.
Yeah.
And also,
No, no,
CEO
because
sales is important. So,
yeah, the reason I noticed this is because I've been listening to various podcasts myself on startups, and one of the things that keeps coming back is like always be raising.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the always be raising story from my side is yes, stay in touch with. I have a clear list. If a new investor pops up, I will take that call. But I may sometimes also say, well, actually, I already have a meeting next week.
Yeah,
So I will not book you until 2 weeks later because I do not want my diary during moments that I'm not fundraising to
yeah,
be filled up with investors alone because of course they will take my calls and I will be able to spend time on them or sorry I could but then I cannot spend my time on the business and I think it would be wrong to spend too much time on the investors during a moment where we do not need to raise
yeah,
but it's a thin line because
yeah,
of course you do need to prepare for that but I also want to avoid that I will be too busy with it as when I'm not raising.
yeah. I think that's very powerful advice to be honest. That
Yeah, well, I hope so.
sometimes it's not time to fundraise,
Yeah,
and that you
yeah,
need to make also make need to at those moments in time you also need to make sure that you can actually spend time on what really matters, which is growing your business.
exactly. Otherwise, there's no
There's no
use to
purpose
actually
of
reach out.
investing.
And that's it. That's it. And let's be clear, that's of course also what your current investors will want. And that's also what my current investors want of me. Like not focus on them all too much or on external potential investors. No, focus on that business so I can show the growth by the time that we really need to. But it's a nuance because indeed it's always be raising. I mean, in the back of my mind, of course, when I'm somewhere, it's always about networking and yeah, making sure that I know which investors are out there. But just try to make sure that it's not too much.
Sounds like a great place to move to my last question.
Yeah.
So I'm on a mission to make inclusion in tech the new normal by the end of 2032. And one way to operationalize that is to make funding of mixed teams like the one you're having the norm by the end of 2032. So what would be your advice to me to make that happen?
Yeah, well, basically, proceed with what you were doing. I love that you're giving this podium to female founders and investors. And I guess for both those groups, also the founders and investors, it's also well the female founders are there. So because I've heard often like oh they're not there, we can't find them. Well, they are there.
Yeah, 96 of them.
Sorry.
96 of them.
Oh, cool. Exactly. Those are you have already indeed. And so they are there. And at the same time, for female founders, I guess that's something we may not have touched as yet, but what we do see in research as well. And I've been thinking about that, whether I agree. And it's very much also that investors, for instance, ask different questions to female founders versus male founders.
Has that also been your experience?
And well, and I've been trying to understand that, like, is that really my experience? But maybe let's put it like this: what I do realize that I have a way of answering questions that is definitely different from my business partner Bart, and I guess there is something in it that has to do with indeed being female versus male, different approach, but already understanding that there is a difference and making sure that you understand who you are talking with in terms of the investor in front of you can really help. So I've really tried to, yeah, just like a client, I try to understand my client and understand what they are looking for. It's also understanding that in an investor and staying true to myself because I'm a female and I'm a woman and have different objectives. I also need to make sure I inform the investor about the things that he or she wants to hear. And well, maybe not going into this too deep at this point, but I do see the differences there, and I'm looking forward maybe to do some research at some point about that, or making sure that I link up with researchers on this point because there is indeed there are lessons to be learned, and it's staying true to yourself is an important one, but at the same time, you can also stay true to basically making sure that you understand what the other one actually is looking for in information. So yeah.
Sounds like
Would maybe love to hear more on that as well.
okay.
I
Yeah.
hope that could help in terms of
Now let's
getting
Let's for sure connect on the research and the data part because I'd love to help.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks.
There's plenty of episodes that deal with this in some way, shape, or form. For now, Yolanda, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. Really insightful. If people want to know more about you, connect with you, and learn more about tex.tracer, where would you like to send them?
It's our website, www.tex-tracer.com, or find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect.
Yeah, and that's Jolanda Kooi on LinkedIn. Good.
Yes.
And we'll mention those links in the show notes. Once again, thanks very much for being my guest. Really
Thank you
enjoyed
so
our,
much.
yeah, really enjoyed this. And listeners, thanks very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to episode 96 of Women Disrupting Tech with Jolanda Kooi on how tex.tracer empowers fashion brands with transparent, resilient supply chains. Yolanda and I hope that you found our conversation interesting and inspiring. And if you'd like to learn more about or connect with Yolanda or tex.tracer, please check out the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes, including Yolanda's bio with links, at womendisruptingtech.blog. When you enjoyed listening to this episode, please follow the show on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or YouTube. Following Women Disrupting Tech is a great zero-cost way to support my guest in making inclusion in tech the new normal by the end of 2032. You can also follow us on social media. Please check out at The True Story Company on LinkedIn and Instagram, and at Women Disrupting Tech on YouTube and Substack. And don't forget to subscribe for more Women Disrupting Tech. Finally, if you want to connect with me, you can reach me at dirkjan at womendisruptingtech.blog, or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you can find me by simply searching for my name, Dirk-Jan Upkes, and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, keep being awesome.